What is going on, everyone? So as you guys know, I've been taking a step back and looking at the older iPhones and kind of seeing how they compare now in the later part of 2018. And what's interesting is that I didn't even think about this, but most of these iPhones that I've been comparing to like later on this year actually came out just around this time, exactly like 2 or 3, 4, 5 years ago. And the same thing with the iPhone 6s Plus. It actually came out in September of 2015. So this phone is actually over 3 years old at this point, but it's around there. So it's kind of interesting to see how this phone holds up almost exactly 3 years later, a little bit over than that, but you guys kind of have the idea. Now, what's really interesting about this phone and really looking at it, why it's important to look at it now, is because not only did we get all those new iPhones, but we also got a new operating system, iOS 12, for this iPhone and many other iPhones as well. So I don't think there's really anyone else on this platform who's really compared all these other iPhones and iOS versions to each other. So I think, the boys got to represent and throw these 6S Plus in a video as well. Now, looking around the body, it's kind of a little sad because it is the older design. It doesn't look the best. All the phone manufacturers have started going the bezel-less route. Same thing with Apple, Samsung, all these people. So the iPhone 6S Plus does not look the best. But it doesn't mean it's not good looking, It definitely has a special place in my heart because people, like I said, I say this all the time. People say the same thing about me. People say I got too much bezel. I'm a little thick around the frame, all these things. And you know what? I embrace it. It's who I am. And this is what made the iPhone 6s Plus an iPhone 6s Plus, because not only the way it looks, but also how it performs. You got to look at that. If people look at me, I'm however I look, but I think I do some things right sometimes. So the iPhone 6s Plus is no exception there. The screen is 5.5 inches. It's 1080p. It's not the best. It's IPS panel as well. It's not an AMOLED. I think if this panel was AMOLED, it would have made it 30 times better, but it is what it is, and I don't think it's a horrible panel at all. And considering the price you're probably going to pay for it, I don't think you can complain too much about it, especially when the iPhone XR has an IPS panel, and that's, going to be about 2 to 3 times more of a price than this. So that's kind of one thing to keep in mind. But you do have Force Touch on this display, so that's very important to note. So you're still going to be able to utilize all those 3D touch functions that we have in iOS 12, and I have a feeling they're going to add more 3D touch functions in iOS 13, but that's still kind of up in the air. We don't have any, that's like all rumors right now. Now, one interesting thing to note, and this is pretty common with every single Apple device, software updates are a real thing. So these phones are going to be supported for a long time. They're going to have a prolonged life, and the 6S Plus is no exception. It started off getting iOS 9. Right now, like I said, it's going to get all of iOS 12. And in terms of the futurability of it, I'm pretty sure it's going to get iOS 13, and then it's most probably going to stop at iOS 13. The reason being is the 5S and the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus are going to stop at iOS 12. And because the 6S and 6S Plus came out after the fact of the 6 and 6 Plus, the 6S and 6S Plus is going to get iOS 13. And in my opinion, I just think it's going to stop there. Usually it gets 4 or 5 years of iOS support, depending if it's a lucky or not. The iPhone 5S got an extra year of support just because iOS 11 was really weird. And the 6S Plus, I'm pretty sure it's going to stop at iOS 13. But I could be wrong, and technically it could get iOS 14 if iOS 13 isn't good or something like that, if Apple makes a huge problem with it. But who knows at this point. But for my opinion, it's only going to get iOS 13, which is still a lot. You're getting all of iOS 12, which is another it'll take you up until June, then the betas of iOS 13. So you'll pretty much be good until like 2020 pretty much. But what good is iOS and operating systems and all that stuff if the performance isn't good? Now, in terms of the raw specs in this phone, it has the Apple A9 chip, a dual-core processor clocked at 1.84 gigahertz, and 2 gigabytes of RAM. Now, with those specs, you might think, oh my god, this phone is a budget phone. It's not going to be able to handle whatever I throw at it, this and that. You need to stop rewinding, dude, because I'm going to give you the answers right now. This phone, in my opinion, is probably the best valued iPhone I could think of. And the reason I give it that title is because the performance for this phone is honestly pretty good. Going from an iPhone 6 to a 6S Plus, or going from an iPhone 6 to an iPhone 6S, or a 6 Plus to a 6S Plus, that is an amazing and huge upgrade going from both those phones. I'm telling you guys right now, you are not going to have any problems with performance for this phone. Whether you're multitasking, gaming and multitasking, opening up heavier intensive apps, whatever you're going to do with it, it'll be able to handle it. Now, I'm not going to say this thing outperforms any of the new flagships or really anything like that. The performance for this is very good, but it's not great. It's not amazing. There are definitely some hiccups. I can kind of see the age starting to show a little bit. With iOS 11, it seemed like it was a little bit less choppy, which is really weird to say. I feel like with iOS 12, it's overall more stable. And also, it's important to note, all the new iPhones coming out and everything like that, the new iOS versions are going to be more suited for the newer iPhones. But even just in the raw performance and everything, I really have had no problems with it. I had the 6S Plus as a daily driver for a couple months, maybe like 6 months, I don't really remember. But I had it for a while, and I remember when I upgraded to the 7 Plus, I honestly still sometimes wonder why I did that. I don't regret having the 7 Plus, but the performance difference between a 6S Plus and a 7 Plus really wasn't that much. And the difference in performance between a 7 Plus and an iPhone 10 was not that much. But the difference between an iPhone 6 Plus, which I had before, and the 6S Plus was very large. And I remember that greatly. To sum it up, whether you're gaming, multitasking, having huge apps up, it's not going to be the best performing phone ever in history. But for the price and for the age of it, I'm very shocked by how well this phone still holds up. So if you're worried about performance or anything like that, I will say yes, performance isn't the greatest thing ever right now, but it's still a very capable phone. And I will say the performance is probably around like a 7 out of 10, maybe like a 6.5, 7 out of 10, which is fairly good considering the age of this phone. Now moving to the cameras, it does have a single camera sensor on the back. Not a huge deal. A lot of new phones still only have the Google Pixel 3, for example, has a single camera setup, and you don't need all these cameras and stuff. People are making like 4 cameras on the back of phones now. It is a 12 megapixel sensor. It has OIS in it, and thankfully you are able to shoot 4K videos at 30 frames per second, and you can also shoot 1080p videos at 120 frames per second. So it's a pretty good sensor overall. It doesn't have all those new features like portrait mode, smart HDR, portrait lighting, all those things, but honestly, for a very basic camera, it does its job. And this is going to make you feel better. It doesn't really mean much, but the newer iPhones, all those, they all also have 12 megapixel sensors, so that might make you feel better. The new cameras obviously are much better, but I'll say that the 6S Plus's camera would definitely be a pro. It's definitely not a con. It'll get the job done and then some. You can shoot very good 4K videos on it. And whatever you really want to do with the camera, it's definitely a pro. Like I said, it doesn't really hinder the phone at all. The front camera is 5 megapixels and you can shoot 1080p at 30 frames per second. It's a good sensor as well. It gets the job done. So both these cameras, I'll say like they're a little bit above average. You're not going to like hate on it. You're not going to say, oh my God, this camera sucks. But I don't think at the same time you'll be shocked by it. But you also have to remember this is like 3 years old of a phone. So, I'll give it props for holding up. So yeah, the camera is pretty decent. Now, one of the weirder aspects of this phone and one of the weirdest trends that I've seen go on with Apple, Samsung, all these phone manufacturers is battery life, and more so the battery size. All these companies have a tendency of like increasing the battery size one year and decreasing it on the other, and then increasing it and decreasing it and all this stuff. And I don't really like that trend at all. I really wish to see a upward trend in battery size. We see an upward trend in every single other thing, screen quality, camera, this, that. But with batteries, it always is like a fluctuating thing. It's never like a upward trend. We see phone manufacturers focusing on so many things except battery. And I think that's one of the last things they're going to do. Phone manufacturers, I think they're going to squeeze out as far as they can to focus on battery last, so then people keep upgrading their phones. Little conspiracy of mine, I don't know. I might make a separate video on it. But in terms of battery life here, I'll say it's not horrible, okay? It is the Plus version, so you do get a better battery size, a bigger battery size than the regular variant, like the 6S, 7s, 8s, whatever. But I will say that it's definitely not amazing. You will get probably a day out of it. If I took my usage on my iPhone 10 and took it on the iPhone 6S Plus, I honestly think the 10 has better battery life overall. So I will say that I might have to charge by the end of the day, but the 6S Plus's battery life is very average. Maybe it's a little bit below average, but what I will say is that if you're getting this phone now, you're probably going to get it used because you can't get them new anymore from the Apple Store. What I would do is if you get this phone before 2019, so December 31st of this year, what I will recommend you do once you get the iPhone 6S Plus, go into settings, go into battery, then click on battery health and look at the size and health of the battery. If it's on like below 90%, I would honestly, they recommend if it's under 80%, but if it's under 90%, I would just recommend taking it to the Apple Store before 2019 because they're offering replace batteries for $30. I think it's like $29. I don't really remember, but very cheap battery replacements, and it brings that battery size back to its full potential, back to 100%. So that will increase your battery size overall. And I would really recommend you guys to do that. So that is kind of a workaround here. The regular battery size is 2750 milliamp hours. So not that small, but again, I felt like they could have increased it a little bit, especially from the 6 Plus, but it's whatever at this point. Now, some other notable things to note, this phone does have the headphone jack, which is super, super important for a lot of people. For me, not so much. I really don't care at this point. You also have Touch ID 2 and the fingerprint sensor, obviously. I like it a lot. I wish every single phone could still retain the fingerprint sensor. Wink, wink, Apple. But I guess we'll kind of see what they do, honestly. I heard the next iPhones are going to bring it, but I don't know. Now, one key little thing is that this phone did have somewhat of water resistance. They never marked it as IP67 or IP66, whatever, waterproof or dust resistant. But from what I heard, there was some water sealing around the screen. So if you get a little bit of water on it, if the screen wasn't replaced or anything by third parties, you will be good. You won't have a problem, but I still would not recommend testing it. But just know in the back of your head, if you get a little tiny bit of water on it, you might be good. But I wouldn't go dunk it in a pool or anything like that. And because this phone is a little bit older, it doesn't really have Qi wireless charging or fast charging or anything like that, but it does still retain the lightning charging port. All those lightning headphones, all those things like that do work with this. And obviously you get Apple Pay and all those things. So is the iPhone 6s Plus worth it in the later part of 2018? I will say 100% yes. I really don't think there's anything fatal wrong with this phone. I know there were some hardware defects, this and that early on, but at this point, I just bought another 6S Plus. I don't have any problems with it. I love it. I loved it when I had it as a daily driver barely even a year ago. I would say if I didn't have this YouTube channel, if I didn't have to go and get the latest and greatest, I could possibly see myself rocking a 6S Plus just because I think it's not only a very safe option, but you're also spending a low amount of money. I would say you can probably get this for less than $300, but you're also getting software updates. So a lot of the new features that iOS and Apple is going to bring to the table, you're going to be able to experience for at least 2 more years. And I could possibly see someone using this phone outside of the iOS updates. Like for example, the iPhone 6, I probably wouldn't recommend people using it outside of iOS 12. Use it in the time frame, but then once iOS 12 is done, go get a new iPhone. But this phone kind of reminds me of the iPhone 5 because I had it on iOS 10.3.3 and I could honestly see myself using it. Probably not now, but back when iOS 11 was around, I kept going back to the iPhone 5 and be like, man, this phone is still super smooth. And I kind of see the iPhone 6s Plus kind of going down that same boat too. But parts to fix this phone are super cheap too. If you need a new screen or anything like that, you can replace it for like $10, $15 on eBay. So yeah, guys, I would really recommend this phone. I will leave a link in the description if you guys want to pick one up. I always try to find the lowest prices on Amazon and link them down below. So if you want to help support the channel and also get the lowest price I can find, get it through that link. And if you ever want to buy another phone or anything like that, get it through that link so then you can help support the channel. It can help me make more videos like this. And it's a win-win and I would love if you guys do that. But that is pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, Lo-Fi Alpaca. I do a lot more iOS reviews, iPhone comparisons on different iOS versions, so definitely check that out. I think you guys, if you like these type of videos, you might like those videos as well, so definitely check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.